say the blue jay is more monster than man. I used to laugh at the stories, sitting on Eddie's filthy stoop while the old-timers swapped tales. Last night, it stopped being funny. I hit his bodega, swiped $379 cash, felt the adrenaline right to my teeth. Ran faster than I thought I could, down rain-slick alleys and over broken fences. The city swallowed me up, but every shadow felt like it was watching. When I found the abandoned apartment, I figured nobody would follow. 3rd floor, back corner, windows busted and peeling. The rot was strong, and the mattress in the corner looked like it hadn't cushioned anything in years. But it was dark, safe, almost. I slammed the door, pockets heavy and breath catching in my throat. Blue Jay, I told myself, doesn't come for small-timers like me. I counted the money. 3 times. The sound of bills rubbing together calmed me for half a second, then the paranoia kicked in. Blue Jay's got a reputation, brutal, silent, strikes from the sky. My hands shook as I scribbled my first journal entry, hoping words would drown out those city legends. First night was torture. Didn't dare sleep. Every hour, the wind rattled glass, and something in the hallway groaned. It could have been pipes or the building settling, but I kept picturing blue feathers dappled by moonlight, sliding along the walls. The chill in the air stung my skin, making me wish for the creaky, crowded warmth of the street outside. By the second day, I was gnawing on a stale candy bar, eyes swollen from lack of sleep. My nerves were electricity. Every time the dusk rolled in, I pressed my face to the window, trying not to flinch at every shadow below. Sometimes, I saw movement. Probably a rat. Probably not him. But I didn't breathe easy. Wrote in the journal before dawn, trying to convince myself this was temporary. Told myself stories about other guys who'd pulled jobs and disappeared. But the blue jay? They say he leaves marks. You'll walk again if you're lucky, but you'll never forget the pain. I kept counting the bills. I started to hate their soft crinkle, like they mocked my hideout. 3rd night, fear turned into rage. I punched the wall, cursed the empty hallway, tried to psych myself into believing I was untouchable. No footsteps, no blue eyes at the door. I kicked the mattress, stomped across broken tiles. For an hour, I almost convinced myself I'd escaped the city's boogeyman. But then came the sound, soft scrape on tile, too gentle for a rat. I froze, clutching the notebook. My leg cramped from crouching still. Heart punched at my ribs. Through the door, silence followed. I swallowed hard, barely daring to breathe. 30 minutes crawled by before I moved again. Probably nothing. Had to be nothing. Day 4, I convinced myself. This is it, I wrote. Nobody finds me here. Not Blue Jay. Not anyone. Hunger was pounding now, so I risked a trip downstairs to a vending machine that hadn't worked in years. Ghosts of kids must have lived here once, murals faded in the stairwell. I held my breath in the silence, comforted less by being alone than by not being caught. I slept a few hours, propped against the wall with jacket for a blanket. My dreams were thick with wings and steel fists. I woke tangled in sweat, jaw aching from grinding teeth. Dawn through shattered glass painted the hallway yellow, almost pleasant, almost normal. I decided to stay until nightfall. Confidence had made me bold. Pack up the money. Stuffy room behind me, notebook jammed in my pocket. Full moon was out, city humming in the distance. The building felt lighter somehow, like it wanted me gone. down the steps, boots echoing, each one daring Blue Jay to show himself. Outside, the street was a mess of glass and grime, but the sky looked clean. I breathed deep, head high, telling myself the hero's stories were for idiots. Just as I hit the sidewalk, a busted lamp flickered. The light shimmered pale blue and I nearly laughed, until my gut dropped. Movement behind me, too quick, too smooth. I spun. Blue Jay was there. Mask and cloak, feathers reflecting light. Eyes, those cold blue searchlights, locked on me. No warning, no words. He surged forward, fists swinging. I tried to scream. No sound came out. Pain hit, the kind that splits your world in half. My jaw snapped sideways, eyes filled with blur and blood. I crumpled. Blue Jay didn't let up. His blows came heavy, methodical, like punishment delivered by the night itself. I tasted iron, felt bone crumble, heard the money scatter onto filthy concrete. As blackness crept in, feathers haloed around his silhouette. The last thing I saw was him looking down, silent and merciless, blue wings shining against the midnight sky. Guess I should have listened to those old stories after all.
I've been chief of this precinct for more than a decade, seen more darkness than most men live through. But the city's whispers recently took a sharper turn. They speak of a man called the Hammer, a vigilante who hunts down the worst of the worst, child abusers, crooked cops, corrupt CEOs. The public calls him a hero. I call him a menace. The first time I heard about the Hammer was from a jittery detective. He kills them the same way they destroyed others, the detective said, voice barely above a whisper. The idea stuck like a thorn in my mind, justice handed out with savage retribution. It made headlines overnight, but I wondered what kind of man could hold such a brutal mirror to sin. One night, they called me to a new crime scene, a power broker found crushed beneath a steel coffin, shaped with care to symbolize the ruin he brought upon the city. I was the first on the scene. As I stepped into the alley, the air thick with the stench of blood and rain, I saw him, a shadow standing by the broken gate, calm as if this were his home. The figure turned. Black leather caught the weak streetlight. He was sporting a Guy Fawkes mask. His eyes weren't angry or frightened. They were clear and cold and without remorse. "You're the Hammer," I said, voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. He nodded. "Justice is broken. I'm its repair." The city had changed, moral decay rotting from inside. I'd seen our courts crumble under corruption, sentences watered down for the powerful. The Hammer's victims were undeniable, men and women who preyed on the helpless. Yet his methods were brutal. I looked around, noting the care in the killer's work. This wasn't chaos. It was punishment designed to reflect the crime, something our law failed to deliver. I asked, why choose this path? Why not the system? He chuckled. The system protects greed and fear. The cries of the innocent are silenced behind closed doors. I am the reckoning for that silence. I shook my head. You kill outside the law. That's murder. Call it what you want, he said. But who listens to those who beg for justice and receive only silence? My victims were untouchable until I acted. Days turned to weeks. Crime rates dipped. The city feared the Hammer, but beneath that fear was hope, a desperate hope for true justice. I wrestled with my duty and my conscience. I faced dire choices. The law was clear. bring him in. But the law also meant condemning the broken system that failed those victims. Finally, I made a decision few would understand. I would not arrest him. In a quiet meeting, I told my officers, sometimes the law fails. Sometimes, the city needs a shadow justice. The hammer is that shadow. We will work with him quietly, guide his strikes to true predators, and keep the chaos at bay. We forged a pact between the lines of law and order. I became his eyes inside the system. He became the unyielding hammer outside it. Like Commissioner Gordon and Batman, we were two sides of the same coin, dedicated to a flawed city. As I left the scene that night, the rain hammered the streets harder, washing away the grime but not the weight of my choice. The hammer wasn't just a vigilante, he was the brutal truth of a city that demanded justice, no matter the cost. And if I had to stand with him in the shadows to protect the city, then so be it.
The Buzzard Motel smells like stale cigarettes and cheap disinfectant. Thin mattress, springs poking through, and a flickering bulb that barely holds a light. It's home for the night or the morning, if I make it that far. I drag myself out of the beaten-up bed, face scraped raw from restless sleep, and pour the strongest, blackest coffee they have. It tastes burnt and bitter, but it's the only fuel I've got for what comes next. I've been on this road so long, it's all I know, riding from town to town, tailing whispers about cults, monsters, and killers no one else can or will catch. My husband died in a way that shattered everything. Some godless cult sacrificed him in the name of a god I refuse to name. Since then, I've been chasing down the things that lurk in the dark corners of this world, fueled by a rage that won't quit. Diners have become my second home. Tonight, it's booth number 7 at a rundown 24-hour joint. Old tomes, police reports, and scribbled notes clutter every inch of the table. The coffee cup's been refilled enough times to call it my shadow. The waitress gives me the kind of look that says you're going to get kicked out soon, and she's right. When the time comes, she gently but firmly ushers me out. Outside, the cold night greets me like an old friend. In a town nobody remembers, I catch wind of strange disappearances, dark markings carved into trees, scared locals shutting their doors tight. A farmhouse sits rotting on the edge of town, walls stained with ancient symbols, the sharp scent of burnt herbs thick in the air. Nobody wants to talk, but the evil speaks loud enough. I find the cult's lair beneath the farmhouse, a dank cellar smelling of incense and death. They're expecting me, chanting around altar fires that flicker with unnatural blue. In their ranks is the monster responsible for snatching my husband. Then he appears from the shadows, or what's left of him. Not the man I loved, but a twisted nightmare with cracked skin, glowing eyes, and a voice like shattered glass. Every step he takes stirs the air with electric dread. Fighting him is like fighting loss itself, sharp and relentless. Our battle tears through the basement, voices clashing with the sound of rain pounding overhead. He calls out my name, mocking, haunted. But the blade I carry doesn't falter. When it sinks into the darkness wearing his face, his scream shatters the silence. I'm left kneeling over what used to be him, broken and bleeding. For a long time, I just sit in that basement, breathing hard, feeling hollow where hope used to live. The world outside goes on, but in that moment, everything feels frozen, like the only thing that mattered was gone. I trace the jagged scar where his smile once lived, a silent promise shattered in blood. Days later, back in the flickering light of another diner, coffee gone cold before I drink it, I make my decision. Walking away from this life is a lie I won't tell myself. There's no peace waiting, no rest. Only the road and the fight. Sometimes, when the nights get too long, I replay the memories, the laugh lines I'll never see again, the touch that the monster stole away. It's hard not to hate everything in those moments. But hate alone can't keep you alive. Lighting a cigarette, I stare out past the cracked window at a world full of shadows and silence. Wherever evil festers, I'll be there, moving through the night, facing down whatever wants to feed on the living. Not for glory or redemption, because it's all I've got left. This life chose me when he died. I'm just the woman left standing in the wreckage, scarred, angry, and ready for whatever comes next. One cheap motel room, one bitter cup, one brutal fight at a time. Between towns, between fights, I sometimes catch myself wondering what normal looks like anymore. If it even exists. No quiet dinners, no long mornings. Just endless smiles and the next nightmare lurking behind the next cracked door. But then the phone rings or a new name hits the list, and there's no choice but to keep moving. This brutal road is mine now, and maybe it always was.